You're listening to Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast.
When your heart is aching and your world is shaking, don't give up. No, don't give up.
Hello and welcome to Oh My Health, There Is Hope, the podcast. I'm your host, Jana Short, and today we're here with a very special guest, TJ Thomas. TJ received his master's in social work from USC and works primarily with teenage clients facing a wide range of mental health issues, particularly in the LGBTQ plus space. He is especially passionate about spreading mental health support and destigmatizing therapy through his social media channels. I am super excited to talk to you today, and I'm going to be picking your brain. But the very first thing we ask TJ is if you'll share a story of hope. Do you want to do that?
Sure, yeah. Hello, everyone. Happy to be here. Let's see. I think probably the best story of hope that I can share is one that actually happened quite recently to me. So as mentioned, I like really working with LGBTQ youth. I also am LDS. And so I'm in this kind of, I'm also and so I'm in this very strange place of being both part of a very religiously conservative community who have been kind of famously against gay marriage and things like that from an organizational level, but trying to find my place to both this religious community that I feel like I belong to and has been a big part of my life and my identity, while also being true to myself of who I am and my attractions and all those kinds of things. And that's been a very, very tricky road to be walking for quite a while. And that's where I like to do a lot of my work nowadays, is trying to help particularly the people who have been in my shoes, who feel like, to put it bluntly, who feel like there's no point in living anymore, who feel like there's no point that, especially when you come from a very religiously conservative community like I do, a lot of the rhetoric sometimes surrounds around how great, the next life will be, and, focusing on, getting to the next life, getting to heaven. Those sorts of ideals kind of come up when we're hearing, religious sermons and those kind of things. And so then when we're faced with what's oftentimes the very bleak reality of what looks like a very hopeless life to be living, it can seem at times like a better option to just, well, okay, let's just skip this life then and let's just get to the next one, if that one's going to be so great and this one seems so terrible. So that's where I do a lot of my work, is that I've been in that very low, dark place at multiple times also. And it's not just something that you go through once and then you're fixed from it forever. Like, different stuff comes up. I went through it again very, very recently. And I know from the work I did with my own therapist when I was a teenager and continuing, I've seen her, for several years. That was kind of what started me wanting to get into this place of realizing that, it doesn't always feel like it, but I really do know that there is hope, not just from like a religious faith-based perspective that I also have, but from a clinical perspective. I've been able to combine those two worlds in this really awesome way. It's helped me see that whatever your path is, and especially in the clientele that I work with, whether it is staying in your faith-based traditions and gaining support from that, or whether it's leaving those traditions that maybe you grew up with because they don't serve you and because they're causing more damage than good in your life, for you personally, that there is reasons to live, that there are people who you can find who will love you, who will support you, who will take you as you are, and whatever beautiful combination of identities that means for you, that there is space for you. And that is my whole work of everything that I'm trying to do moving forward with my career and my personal life, is to find and help show people that there is space for them, no matter what that combination looks like, whether in religion or out, whether, in all of these different combinations that people can be.
Well, TJ, you probably are not going to be aware of this, but I feel like you've been put on our doorstep for a reason. So I too raised my children LDS.
Okay.
I recently I don't want to give them up because that's their space, right? But
Sure.
I recently had someone I love that I'm a patriarch over, basically, come out to us. And honestly, this person felt like taking their own life, that they were not going to be accepted. And I don't care what church you are in, and this isn't bashing any churches, but you are wanted and accepted in exactly the body you're in, whatever that may be. And it broke my heart to see this beautiful child look at me and tell me that she thought I would hate her, reject her, or treat her any differently than we would. So I think you are in a perfect spot right now to share with all those young people that they're okay. There's nothing wrong with them. They're not broken. They are totally okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. But that is, I mean, it's a kind of a funny thing because you get to this place where it doesn't matter how many times other people say it, there's always that internal fear of being a disappointment, not being enough, being rejected by family or friends or the community at large. And yeah, when you belong to a religiously conservative community like the LDS Church, for example, which I still attend and I still love. But unfortunately, yeah, there are things that are said or lessons that are taught with the best of intentions that are not quite as aware of the damage or the impact that they're having on those listening ears, especially because I think a lot of it is just out of not recognizing how common the LGBTQ identity is, especially within religious communities. Recent polls have shown that in the general population at large, it's roughly 5 to 6%, depending on the study that you look at, which is a pretty big number already, right? 1 in 20, like that's not insignificant. But then if you look at the studies have to try to figure out, obviously where are those numbers coming from? And one of the things they've noticed is that the Gen Z population is roughly 16% identify as LGBTQ or non-heterosexual, non-cisgender in some way. And so much of the speculation about why the general population is 5%, but the Gen Z population is 16%, is that the older generations, the millennials, the Gen X's, and the boomers are not as comfortable with that identity that otherwise they might have answered yes to on a survey. So people are actually thinking that the true number is probably closer to between 10 to 15%. So that's over 1 in 10 are LGBTQ. So when we're speaking to any population, if we're ever thinking, oh, well, the LGBTQ, I don't need to be thinking about that in this population. If you're speaking to a group of 10 people, chances are very, very, very good that at least one person in that group of 10, like 10 is like, that's a small classroom, right? Like whether you're a teacher or whatever you're doing, 10 people, you have to be aware that one person in there very, very likely identifies in some form of LGBTQ, and maybe just hasn't opened up to it yet, or, there's a whole lot of stories that it could be. But this is one thing that I talk to, especially leaders of churches and congregations about, is that you can't think, oh, well, there's not a gay person in our congregation, so we're fine, because there statistically definitely is, even if it's just a couple of the youth who aren't out yet, or maybe who don't even know themselves yet, but they just know that something is wrong about themselves, or they feel like something's wrong with themselves, and they know that they're different in some way. Being that person who can be supportive and who can be loving and open literally can save people's lives. The suicide attempt rates among teenagers who are LGBTQ is 500% higher than the suicide attempt rates of heterosexual cisgendered youth. So it's just not something that we can ignore.
That is a very, very substantial number. And look, we're not bashing any religions, because I don't feel it's necessarily the religion, but people who are either not educated, they are scared, they don't understand, or they think it's something you can fix, like it's a choice that you made and it's something they can fix. And that's the first thing I want to let this person in our family know is you're not broken, you're perfectly normal. It's perfectly normal that for you to choose what you want. But I feel like they feel like they're broken. Something's wrong with them, and they are not accepted by society. And for a young teenager, I don't know how many of you are remembering when you were a teenager in high school and somebody made fun of an outfit you wore, or something you said, or a haircut your mom gave you, and the world came in. Now the teenagers of today, it's not just a group of kids at school, it's a whole world on social media, judging and attacking. I don't know how they do it, but there's a lot on our youth's shoulders.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I fully agree with that. And that's one of the reasons that I've chosen personally for myself, and I will say, at least for the time being, because no one knows what the future will bring, but to continue to practice and be, a participating member in this religion that I grew up with, is because I do, like you said, I don't think that it's something that the religion itself teaches. I think there are some very unfortunate, misunderstood cultural aspects that have crept into place that are not the actual teachings, right? It's not the teachings of Christ. If you're LDS or any version of Christianity, it's not the teachings of, any major world religion, if whether we're talking about Islam or Buddhism or anything, there's always these centers of love. But unfortunately, we get very far from that when we start getting dogmatic. And so that's one of the reasons that I choose to stay, is that I hope that I can be a voice to help. It's not about changing doctrines or beliefs or any of these things. It's just about helping people's hearts to be a little bit more open and a little bit more, like in my world, a little bit more Christ-like about, the way that we speak about people and that we talk about people and the way that we treat people that unfortunately we create these us versus them mentalities sometimes in our cultural mindsets, but there is no us versus them. It is all we.
So like the only job that we were given here as human beings on planet was to love each other. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very clear, like it's not our job to have to judge them. That's somebody else's. And if someone is doing something wrong, they know that. I don't want any youth that are listening to the show, including my grandchildren who are growing up in their teens now, to ever judge somebody else or feel like they're being judged for whatever their choices are. They're totally okay. And by the way, my mom had a great quote when I was a kid growing up: the masses are asses. She used to always tell me, dare to be different, baby girl, go out and change the world, right? Different people change the world when they stand up in their truth.
I like that quote.
And it's true, and not bashing any churches. I know the Catholic Church is coming around. They're making changes slowly. I know the LDS is definitely coming around on different points of view, and that's okay. Change is good, and change doesn't happen overnight. And by the way, sometimes the slower change is better change, right? The little steps that we're taking towards that change.
Yeah. Slow change definitely can be frustrating at times, but it does help to make sure that the change is stable. So, and whether you're talking organizationally or personally, it works the same way.
So what would you say to the youth? Because right now, my heart is leaning towards those young kids are just coming into their sexuality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're maybe terrified to tell their parents, and they're hiding it, and they're trying to be who they're not. And they're afraid of being not loved by the people who brought them into this world, or, the people that are supposed to accept them in their churches. What would you tell those young people right now, like about moving into your truth and being okay with that? And sure, sometimes it hurts at first pulling off that Band-Aid, but pretty soon people get back to the fact that they just love you.
Yeah. The first thing I think you've already covered beautifully, which is that you are not broken. You are loved. You are perfect. You are whole exactly the way you are. But I think it's hard to believe that, even if someone tells it to you, no matter how many times you hear it, it can be really hard to believe that when you're in that spot. So the other thing I would say is that you're not alone. There are, so I went and I did the math, statistically, even just, I won't get into the math. Math is not as fun for everyone else as it is for me, but you are definitely not alone. Like I said, even if we just look at the base estimates of Gen Zers, which is your young population, you are 16% of the Gen Z population is estimated to be LGBTQ, right? So that's 1 in 7 approximately. That's a lot. Even I did my undergrad at Brigham Young University. BYU recently had a study that was 13% of students at BYU are LGBTQ. That's, again, a huge number. Way more people have been thinking that it's like 1 in 100, 1 in 200. It's not. It is 1 in 8 at BYU are LGBTQ, and that's a lot. In these classrooms where you have anywhere between 30 to 400 kids, you can look around and think, okay, how many other are there out there? And there's a lot. The place that helped me to find this personally, I hope it's okay if I mention some other podcasts.
Sure, no.
One, and I've been a guest on both of these podcasts, actually. The first is Listen, Learn, and Love, hosted by a guy named Rich Osler. And he just has people come on and tell their stories. These are both geared to the LDS/LGBTQ market, but they both do really great jobs at just talking about LGBTQ issues in general. And he's got over 400 episodes at this point. So there's so many people's stories. And just for me listening to those and just hearing, wow, there are so many other people out there who are like me, who are trying to figure this out, who are trying to reconcile their faith and their sexuality, or trying to figure out how I fit in here. Are there other people like me? Do I belong anywhere? That really, really helped me to hear these other people's stories, and so many of them. And then the other one is called Questions from the Closet. And that one is hosted by a guy named Ben Shalati, who's a BYU professor, and a guy named Charlie Bird, who, if you remember, ESPN did like a mascot competition a couple years ago, and BYU's Cosmo Cougar won like this huge national mascot competition. This guy, Charlie Bird, was that Cosmo Cougar who won this contest. He's super talented. And then after he graduated, you have to keep it a secret that you're the Cosmo Cougar. After he graduated, he came out as both, hey, I was the Cosmo, and also, by the way, I'm gay. And so they host this podcast, and those episodes are more, each episode is a specific question that people are asking. And it covers everything from like, what is asexuality, or what is transgender for people who are maybe really new to the space, to some more, deeper questions like, why do you stay in the church? Or what if I want to leave the church? Or, how do I find someone who will love me for who I am? Some of the really harder to wrestle with questions. So those are both really good resources that helped me a ton just to feel less alone. And I think that's a really, really important thing, because belonging is one of the greatest human needs. It's one that Maslow missed on his hierarchy of needs. We talk about food and shelter and all that. Those are great, but belonging and acceptance and love are really the core human need.
You talked about people asking why you stay with a church that they're not as open to seeing that. And here's the thing, churches are made of imperfect people, which is okay. They come with imperfections, they're growing, right? We're growing here on this earth until we move into the next space. Like, this is our space to grow, and we're all growing at different levels. It doesn't have anything really to do with the church or what we believe in it. It's the people made up of the churches and what their beliefs that they're bringing to the table. And that's okay too, right? There's no shame on that. They're just going to process, because I probably was one of those people years ago until I evolved understanding and being introduced and not being so afraid, because a lot of times we're afraid of what we don't know. And then as we start getting educated and learning more, that fear drops away and acceptance starts to step in.
There is definitely a lot that is just fear of the unknown based. I mean, I know I was like that. I know, and I'm very sad that for years I was doing and saying very hurtful things to the LGBTQ population as an LGBTQ person. I was very deep in denial, and I was trying so hard to, overcompensate or whatever. I used to have a blog that I ran, and one of the articles that I posted on there was why I am against gay marriage. And now I came to a point a little while back where I was considering deleting that old blog post because I knew it was very hurtful, and I decided not to, but I added a caveat at the beginning of the blog post that I put this update that, clarified that, I wanted to leave it up there because I think it's important to be honest and authentic with that part. That was part of my journey, was figuring out, it was something that at the time I thought that I believed, and people change beliefs, and that's okay too, that people change beliefs all the time. And some of the people I've seen who become the staunchest supporters of any group, some of the strongest allies, whether it's LGBTQ or minorities or for women or anything else, are people who previously had been opposed to it. And then their eyes are open and they learn and they grow. And that's a part of the process too. So no matter where you are on the process, whether it's just starting to figure out who you are, whether you're as deep in denial as I was for a long time, or you're just trying to figure it out, or you're still, maybe you've got it figured out, but you don't feel comfortable or safe with where you are. Maybe your family, your friends, you're worried they're not going to be as supportive, or maybe you're out and you're trying to figure it out, that part of your life. Every part of the path is okay. And it's okay that even if you think right now, this is where I'm going to be in 5 years, and that's drastically different, that's cool too. It is okay to change your mind. It is okay to grow and develop. It's one of the reasons I will never get into politics, because as soon as you change your mind once, people call you a flip-flopper. I'm like, no, I just learned new things and I grew and I changed as a human. That's okay. So that would be my message, is you are loved, accepted. There is so much belonging for you because there are so many more than you may realize. and that wherever you're at on that journey, it's okay. And don't feel like you have to pressure yourself, or don't listen to pressure from anyone else. If they're trying to tell you to be you in any certain way, that is for you to figure out.
I love that. And if you're fortunate enough, you have a family that's going to support those choices and understand, and not, because I've had people come to me saying they've tried to fix it. Like they sent them to a psychologist to try to fix it. And
yes,
they're not broken.
Yep.
There's nothing broken.
Yep. Anyone out there who's listening who might need to hear this, I don't know who you are, but you cannot fix or pray away sexuality. Doesn't happen. I'm telling you, clinical stamp of approval, you cannot fix that. So get that out of your head. Let's see, what other things would I like to say as a clinician to clear up any rumors or myths?
Well, TJ, I would add one more thing. The reason you can't fix it is because they're not broken.
Yes. Yep.
They're not broken. You can't fix something that isn't broken. It's just what it is.
Right. It would be like trying to fix left-handedness. Like it's not.
Well, they used to try that.
Well, yeah, and they used to. That's the thing. It used to be seen as this negative thing, and now it's like, well, yeah, you're left-handed. Hopefully, one day being LGBTQ can be as normal as being left-handed. And sure, if you're born left-handed, you might be able to force yourself to write with your right hand, but you will always be feeling like you're out of sync.
Left-handed, dominant, right?
Yeah, you will always be feeling out of sync with who you really are. And so, yeah, some people, unfortunately, there's been some conversion therapists and stuff who have done work that people have been able to repress their sexuality, but it doesn't change sexuality. It only leads to more pain and trauma down the line. And I've seen that countless times through stories that I've read from people who've experienced it, and through clients that I've met with as well. Same thing with transgender. It is not something that there is a lot of help that can be had for all LGBTQ people in therapy, just like there's for everyone, with, figuring out who they are and learning to love themselves and accept themselves and dealing with other people who don't love and accept them. But you don't send them to therapy to try to fix it or to try to change it or to try to whatever, because that's not how it works.
So I will tell you, though, having said that, this person in my family, who I don't want to say their name because that's their place to share this.
Sure.
But the first thing I wanted to do is get them into therapy, but it wasn't to fix them. It was to let them know they're not broken.
Yes.
To let them step in that light and be like proud and not ashamed when they have a person they're in love with, or engaging in a romantic relationship with, that they're not hiding that and they're out in the open and living in there. Because I see so many people, maybe not the youngest generation coming up, but older generations who hid it forever, and they wrecked families. They had children that got exposed to it later in life, and they didn't live in their truth, and it caused more damage than just living in their truth.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. Going to the therapy, as long as that therapist you're going to, and conversion therapy is illegal in most states at this point, including Utah, which is, I think, kind of cool. Yeah, going to a therapist who can help you to learn to better love yourself and accept yourself and deal with because there's a lot of emotional baggage that comes with having this big part of your identity having to be secret for so long, or those kind of things. Having someone to help you deal with that is immensely, immensely helpful. But yeah, don't send your kid into therapy thinking that they need to be fixed or that they even can be, because it's not what it is. In addition to that, don't look for, I mean, it goes along with the idea that it's not something that's wrong. It's not something that's broken. Stop looking for reasons for it. Don't try to figure out, oh, well, it's because they were involved in this, stereotypically maybe feminine group. Like I did theater growing up. Theater didn't make me bi. I am bi and I did theater. Like, they're separate things, right? Don't blame porn. Doesn't make people gay. Porn doesn't make anyone LGBTQ, transgender. That's not how it works. What are some other things people blame it on? Parenting styles have been blamed for this for a while. Having either an overbearing mother or an absentee father, those things have been blamed. Hanging around other gay people has been blamed for a while, that it's like contagious somehow. Just none of those things are true. Your kid is your kid. Or, I mean, I don't know if it's your kid, maybe it's your brother, sister, whoever. They are who they are. They are the person that they are meant to be. They are exactly the way that they are supposed to be. And trying to find either something to blame it on or trying to find a solution, like some way to change it or fix it or anything like that, will do absolutely no good, but can do a whole lot of damage. Yeah, so that's where I would say on the clinical side of things.
So for young kids who are like coming into their, like if you're working with young kids, they're just learning their sexuality.
Yes.
And so I think a lot of parents will think, well, maybe this is a phase. Like, but here's, by the way, when this person came to me and told me of their gender orientation and everything, the first thing that popped in my head was it was a phase. And I said, how do you know? And they're like, how did you know you liked men? Well, I just knew.
Yeah.
So do I. Like I didn't have to think about it. It just is who I am.
Yep. Yeah. Kids do go through a lot of phases with experimentation and that sort of thing. I don't think I've ever met a kid who was willing to go through the heart-wrenching, terrifying, awful trauma of coming out and facing all of that fear and all of that potential rejection and all of the worries and things that come along with that for something that is a phase. It's just not something that you would choose to do. If it's something that a kid is thinking is a phase, trust me, they've thought about it before you have. They have questioned whether it's a phase before you have. They have wrestled with it for a lot longer. But I would add this, even if, and I don't think it is, but even if your kid was coming to you and coming out, and even if in this one instance, that one kid, maybe it was a phase that they were just experimenting with, so what? You love where the kid is at in their phase and you don't try to fix the phase, because if you love them and accept them, that is going to send a much clearer message than you questioning or trying to get them to doubt themselves or anything like that ever will. I see kids a lot who are in a lot of different phases. Some kids are in phases where it's phases of anxiety or depression. Some of it's going to be with them their whole lives. Some of them, it's only going to be with them for a little bit. In any case, if you validate the current feelings and you love them where they're currently at, that will do so much more to not only help them to figure themselves out and to help them be more emotionally stable and secure, but it'll help them in their relationship with you. And it'll help them feel like you're someone that they can trust. So don't be worried about whether it's a phase or not. I'll tell you, it's probably not. But even if it were, questioning that or doubting that or making them try to question it is not going to help.
No, it's not. As a matter of fact, it's going to push them further away from you and into a dark space where they don't know where they can go when they have these issues. Mm-hmm. So we don't have a lot of youth that listen to the show, but we do have a lot of parents and grandparents and, older people who maybe have not come out because they're afraid or they don't want to go against what they consider the norm. And you are normal. Yes. There is no going against it. What would you say to like the parents right now who are maybe dealing with youth who are just starting to come into their sexuality and voicing that maybe they feel different than what their parents were expecting them to feel?
So to parents of youth who they suspect are maybe coming out or those kind of things. Yes. Okay. The first thing I would say is a quote that I heard a while ago, which I just love so much, is be careful who you hate because it might be someone you love. Ooh. That even if your kid hasn't come out, first, I would say there's no one right way to do this. I've heard stories of some parents who suspected their kid was LGBTQ and asked their kid about it, and that made the kid feel welcome to open up and talk about it. But I've heard other stories where parents asked their kid and the kid shut it down and they didn't want their parent to ask that. So I can't give you like a prescriptive, here's how to deal with it. But I can tell you that whether you suspect your kid is or not, if you talk lovingly about any population who's considered an other, any population, I don't care who it is, LGBTQ, different races than you, different religions than you, different ethnicities than you, different nationalities than you, whatever. If you talk lovingly about other groups of people, your kid will recognize that you are someone who loves other people. And so then no matter what it is that they become an other in, whether it's because they're worried about disappointing you by being LGBTQ or taking a career path you don't approve of or whatever, the more you talk positively and lovingly and supportively about other people who are outside of your circle, the more they will see that you are a safe person to talk to. And they may not right away say, hey, thanks for saying that, you had this gay coworker and they're so great and you love them so much and they're such a wonderful person. Even something as little as that tells the kid, okay, maybe it would be safe to talk to my parents about anything, whatever it is. Talking just in generally about that, about, speaking positively and lovingly about other groups of people will tell your kid that you're a safe person to talk to. the next thing that I would say is that if your kid does come out to you, the number one thing that should be on your mind is letting your kid know how much you love them. Everything else will come later. Any concerns you have about their dating life or their future or anything else, or who their friends are, doesn't matter. That is another conversation for another day. When your kids come out to you, the only thing that they need from you is love, because this has been a terrifying thing for them to get to be able to open up about this. They have struggled and wrestled with this idea and exactly how they would say it to you for so long in the vast majority of cases. So your job is to love them. And I would add to love them specifically. Give them, don't just say, I still love you and I'll always love you. That's great. It's a great first start. But I would challenge you to be more specific, because when a kid comes out the first time, it's maybe, well, hey mom, I'm gay. Great. I love you. I'll always love you. But in the back of that kid's mind is, okay, well, they love me that I'm gay, but what if I bring home a boyfriend, or what if I get married to a man? Will they still love me then? That's where kids get really tripped up, is even if you say always isn't specific enough. Tell them, I love you. It doesn't matter who you are dating, who you end up with as your partner, what your life or your family looks like in the future, what you want to do. I will always love you, and your boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, family, whoever will always be welcome in our home. That is what your kid needs to hear. They need to hear those specific things, because otherwise it just becomes a doubt and this question in their head of, well, sure, they love me now, but what about this next step I might have to take? So be very specific about that. And if you're religious, add in there, whether you remain in our family's faith tradition or whether you decide that you need to leave, I will still always love you and you will always be welcome in our home. Those things will mean so much to your kid in making sure that they feel with you and safe, and that they always can turn back to you. Because I would say that, a lot of parents worry about, especially in my world, in this religious world, they may worry about their kid's salvation, or they may worry about the next life or whatever else, but those things are not your job. Your job is to make sure your kid feels welcome in your home, in your house, at your dinner table. Everything else can come later.
I can't even imagine if I didn't have a safe space at my parents' home. Like, that is your safe space. And what you just said was probably the best thing I've ever had on the show, because it really does give you the tools to get through that moment. Because honestly, if you say, I love you, oh my gosh, wait till your father finds out. Even like something as simple as that could trip them into thinking they're going to be rejected, they're not wanted, they're a nuisance, there's something wrong with them. And that's when they give up. And so the words you choose and the love you show can change that outcome so much. Like, I just think that is the best piece of advice I've ever had on the show.
Thank you. I've given it to a lot of people, so I'm glad it's good. Otherwise,
It is really good. Because even I know you want to react. Like, for instance, you have a daughter telling you she's gay, and all you've envisioned was her walking down in her wedding dress, and that was for you, not for her. Right? She's very happy in her space. So you have to not react and say, I don't care. I love you. Like, you're amazing, just exactly like you are. And it doesn't matter what you do. And being very specific, I agree, instead of generalizing, yeah, I love you no matter what. Like, that's not enough. It's enough for them to know that you love them in spite of whatever is going on in their life, because there's nothing wrong with that. That's their journey, right? Their journey to find love and happiness. So so long as they're happy and healthy, I've seen too many parents who've lost their children to suicide because of one remark. In the moment, they just reacted, and really, it's nothing that they did wrong either. They just reacted. They weren't prepared. They acted inappropriately, and that child was enough to send them over the edge and feel rejected. So take a breath, because like you just gave the numbers a little while ago, 1 in 7, right? Your beautiful child might come to you and say something like this. They're not broken. It's totally okay.
And I would, if you're, a new parent, old parent, whatever, I would think about and kind of run a script in your head of, how would I react if my kid came and told me this? Because it will be a lot easier if you've kind of practiced it ahead of time, and then when it comes, it'll happen. And to give as much grace as possible to all the parents who maybe feel like they've already messed it up, like they did have a coming out and it didn't happen. This is a hard thing. I mean, just like you said, there's that idea in your head of the wedding dress or whatever else, that we've got these ideals and these expectations. And, maybe you're in a straight heterosexual marriage that you just love so much. And so of course you think that, well, this thing that makes me so happy, I want my kid to be happy. So I want them to have this. And it may be hard to understand how they might be happy doing something different because, this has brought you so much joy in your life. There is a grieving process. There is a grieving process when your kid comes out, but it's not the kind that you think. It's only grieving the expectation. If you are loving your kid, it's okay that you feel sad that you're not, maybe you won't have the whole picture in your head that you've been envisioning for them their whole life. That's okay to grieve that and to lose that. But if you let that take over the conversation, then you're going to be not only grieving the expectation, but you might be grieving a kid who doesn't talk to you anymore. And that's,
or a kid who decided they couldn't go on anymore,
or
yeah, the saddest loss. And by the way, it's real that happens. And so practicing it, or even saying, oh, wow, that's a lot. Just give me a minute, right? To put it together, and then coming right away and saying, it doesn't matter. I love you. Like, I'm so glad that you are able to tell me this, step into your truth. And I support that 100% because it's scary. It's very scary. There are people who lie for years and years and years to not hurt others while they hurt themselves. And they end up having to come out because it's who they are. And it ends up hurting people.
Yes. And you know what? And I'll say this too, even if you are a parent who right now is not, on board with, LGBTQ, if you're a parent who maybe has a really hard time with the idea of that, and that it's the scariest thing in your mind of if your kid were to come out LGBTQ, it's okay that that's where you are. That's fine. But those are, like I said, those are all questions that can come later. Your religious views, your political views, your feelings, your doubts, your concerns, your questions, your anxieties, any of that other stuff about what the rest of your kid's life will look like, how it will be different from what you expected, how will they fit in the church, or how whatever else, that is another conversation for another day. Your first and number one priority has to be that you love your kid. That has to be it.
Well, TJ, that was an incredible place to end this. I wish I could keep talking to you because I just feel like the more we talk about this, the more we educate, the more we accept, the better the world gets.
Yes.
And so I am so excited about this. Just tell me real quickly, who is it that you are working with as a coach right now, or as is it a therapist that you do?
Yes. So I am a clinical social worker. So I'm a therapist right now. I'm basically in like the therapist's version of residency to get fully licensed to be able to start my own practice. So right now I work at a location here in Salt Lake area called the Greenhouse Center. And yeah, I wish I could solicit some clients right now, but we have like a 5-month waiting list. It's such a need for therapists right now. But if you would like any free resources, I do have my Instagram account is at TJ Counseling. And I do weekly videos there, and I do quotes, and I do, little comments, and I put as many resources up there as I can. Because I know there's a lot of people who want more help, and just, whether it's because you're on a very long waiting list for a clinic, or just because, maybe you can't afford it, don't have the insurance, maybe you live somewhere that you're, in a rural area that doesn't have a therapist nearby, whatever it is, people need more access. So that's what I'm working towards. I also hope to have more resources up soon. I'm working on an ebook. I'm working on a website that will have more materials and things. So please, if you're in this place and you want more help or resources, come follow me on at TJ Counseling, and I will do my very best to get as much out to you as I can.
Thank you so much, TJ. I'm so glad that you shared all that with us. I think it's a message that definitely needs to be shared.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here.
Thanks for listening to the Oh My Health There Is Hope podcast. Make sure to visit Jana's website, bestholisticlife.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, or listen there, so you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you simply tell a friend about the show, that'll help too. Let's change the world together, one health expert at a time. Looking forward to seeing you next time.